So this is the Nike ReactX Rejuven8 in light Orewood brown, and these are released in 2025, and they were also made as a recovery shoe, hence why it's got ReactX in there. And also with the details, it comes in a light Orewood brown, and this is a women's exclusive colorway, and there seems to be quite a few of these Rejuven8s that are women exclusive. However, if you look at the box, they kind of have the same sort of size as basically for men's. However, on certain sites they're kind of labelled as, you know, for men anyway, as a UK 7.5, but getting them in hand, they're still pretty much the same as a men's pair. The only difference being is obviously the colour scheming, but having had both the men's and this women's version, both feel the same in all honesty. And like I said, it comes in this light Orewood brown colourway, and it has a ReactX midsole, so I think that's basically inside this area here. So this is glued on by the looks of it to me, the outsole, and then inside that is a ReactX, and I think all this outer shell here is just standard sort of, you know, EVA really, or polyurethane, whatever the material they use, but I think ReactX sort of sits underneath this rubber mechanism, in my opinion, because you feel a little bit of sort of squishiness, similar to a Crocs. And you know, Crocs have been giving Nike some stick about this as well, but you know, they do look very Crocs-like. They do have these breathable holes on the upper, but you definitely need that because it's quite a sort of thick cut of rubber. And as I mentioned, it's got this sort of foam material on the upper and outsole. And the price on these are £65, which isn't too bad for this type of footwear. So with the comfort and sizing, this is on the soft to medium side. They feel kind of neutral, but also have a bit of give to them, more so than a Yeezy Foam Runner, for instance. Probably similar to, I suppose, a Crocs Mellow Clog, but I'd say they're more on the softer side actually than these, and have more give. So these are sort of kind of in between a Foam Runner and I suppose a Crocs Mellow Clog, if you will. And also no wearing time with these. They're fine out of the box, they're good to go, and they work pretty well. And you can go true to size on these, and kind of have to go true to size really. They don't come in half sizes, so like I said earlier, even if you go for the women's size, they seem to appear in half size, but they're not really. So just bear that in mind. I have a UK size 7 as my foot measures, but because it's on the wide side, I tend to go up half size in certain pairs of footwear, and you know, usually that's more sort of mesh runners, but with sort of more things like Jordan 1s or Jordan 3s, Jordan 4s, you know, I can go sort of true to size on those, and sometimes depending on, say, like a Jordan 4, I'd go up half size, but you know, even things like Jordan 5s, you know, I'd go true to size. So it just depends on the silhouette. With this one I just went true to size, so I didn't really want to have sort of heel slippage and that kind of stuff, and kind of sort of bear and grin it. And what my advice would be is, obviously if you're wearing a pair of these and you're in between sizes, it's probably to go down half size and try, you know, maybe grabbing a really sort of thin pair of socks, and to kind of help, you know, alleviate some of that, you know, extra space that you'd see here. And these obviously are made for the summer anyway, so you can probably get away with wearing sort of thinner socks, and that should help, you know, with some of the fitting. And I think these have got really good grip. They're really sticky and tacky. Feels like a basketball shoe. So even though it doesn't look like there's much there, walking around in these, it's very sticky, very tacky. And you can kind of see on here it's got sort of their grind material going on, which Nike usually uses in their, I suppose, more sort of recycled type materials that they use. So with the look and style, I mean, it's got this simple colorway. That's the reason why I went for these ones. You know, originally I did have the khaki, but I felt like these ones are probably an easier wear with pretty much everything, and they're going more on the white side. And what I also noticed on Zalando, for instance, they did have a white pair, which was also a women's exclusive, and I definitely would have went for those, for example, because they're just easier to wear. The black pair I like, but the black pair look too much like you know, what you call like plimsolls. So for me, you know, this is probably like the perfect one because it sort of matches everything. And like I said earlier, it's a good spring summertime shoe. For some reviews I've checked, they complain about it getting warm, and that's mainly probably because of the thicker material around the sides. You know, it does feel quite thick. Not so much here, but so I do understand, and that's kind of rubber in general. So whether you wore sort of Yeezy Foam Runners or, you know, Crocs footwear, you're going to get that anyway. But what I will say is, with like the Foam Runners, for instance, they have a lot of holes on all over the shoe, therefore, you know, it's going to have more breathability. But this one is kind of mainly at the top, so I imagine it will get hot around sort of these areas on the medial and lateral side. And as a sort of casual wear sneaker, you know, obviously good for recovery, that's what it's made for, but also, you know, just sort of wearing around in and around town, you know, just doing your errands, you know, it's fine for that kind of stuff. And also being just a slip-on, you know, it's a straightforward shoe really, so it's nice and easy to get on and off, and quite a lot of sort of room to wiggle as well. So with the final thoughts, I do like the breathability, or, you know, is what you get on top. And the ReactX foam does feel very nice on foot, and probably one of the nicer ones, you know, from my perspective anyway. I do like that kind of more neutral foot feeling. And like I said, the comfort in general is nice. I wouldn't say it's like top range, but it's still very nice for this type of footwear. So the cons, the silhouette isn't for everyone. The top down view, and this is like most foam type footwear, it feels very, very wide, and it looks very wide, and that's, you know, the design. Like I said, it's got like quite a lot of thick material around here, especially, you know, around the sort of this toe box area, and obviously that's for protection and as well as sort of rigidity. But I just found that, you know, makes it look a lot wider than on foot, but also that thickness does provide that warmth. And like I said, sizing, because they don't come in half sizes, you kind of have to work with it. But I just feel like, you know, if you went up half size, you probably, you know, to your next full size. I don't know, that seems a bit too much to me, I suppose. But, you know, I suppose if you're, say, a UK 7.5 or a US 8.5, then I think in that respect you probably want to go up half size. But for everyone else, I'd probably say, you know, just stay to your true size. So with the ratings, I'm going to give the look and style a 4. I don't think it's a 5 out of 5 piece of footwear in terms of its looks, because of the fact that it's, like I said, I still feel it's divisive, you know, much like any of these sort of foam sneakers really, and just depends on what you prefer. What I will say, this one feels a little more neutral, I suppose, on foot, say to the foam runner, but obviously because it's got this Nike swoosh and branding, it makes it look more sporty, and same with the lines that are going across it. So that's the reason why, you know, I think the foam runners are better, because in that respect, because you can kind of wear them with anything really, whilst with these, I feel like they're slightly more on the sportier side. Comfort, I'm going to go with 4. I feel like it's not a 5 completely. I'd probably want something that's a lot more comfortable than what these are, but I still feel like it's the kind of happy medium between, you know, buying a soft pair of Crocs and a pair of Yeezy foam runners. So in that instance, it's fine, it does its job. And the quality, again, it's just foam materials. I like the fact that they put ReactX in there, which is a nice touch, and that's why I've given that a 4. And the pricing, I'm going to go with the 5. I think, you know, obviously with Nike they could have charged more, especially in this sort of climate, but £65 is good value. There's also a slight version coming out soon, but I'm sure that would be priced at about £55, which is about $65. But yeah, overall I think it's fine what you know, paying for the price. And that's why overall, and give the score a 4. I think, you know, as a piece of footwear, I think it's really cool. It's up there with all the other foams pieces of footwear. But just like I said, there's a few sort of things around, you know, the warmth that's in there, but also the divisive looks, and that's why, you know, I think it's a 4. But I think other than that, you know, it's a solid piece of footwear and definitely worth grabbing, especially for the summertime. And I feel like obviously they are popular at the moment as well.